a slow motion disaster on the border. Thousands of Haitian migrants melting away without a trace. The White House won't say how many or where they are, and they won't even admit who screwed up. So why has nobody resigned or accepted responsibility? The pictures have been horrifying and heartbreaking. Scores of desperate men, women, and children living in a city made of sticks and tents. Temperatures soaring above 100 degrees every day. And today the Fed started tearing down the encampment. The problem is it's unclear where everybody went. And today at the White House, Jen Psaki's arch nemesis Peter Doocy hit her with a little jujitsu. Take a look at this.
There are 15,000 migrants under the Del Rio Bridge Saturday. If you add up the ones that you say were expelled or released, it's less than 5,000. Say there's 5,000 that are still left. Where's everybody else?
I'm happy to get you a more fruitful rundown for you, if helpful, from the Department of Homeland Security.
Well, it's obvious why this is happening. The president's border policy is non-existent. And guess who the White House is blaming? Just guess. Seriously, guess. Okay, watch.
We could not see it as any more different from the policy of the prior administration, which the president feels, we all feel, was inhumane, immoral, ineffective, wasn't operationally working. And because of the dysfunction of it, we have led to a very broken system that we're dealing with today.
Those are a bunch of words. Even Democrats know that's a bunch of horsepucky. AOC is calling the situation a disgrace, and rightly so. But if the current administration is still blaming the last administration, are they really serious about fixing this problem? Joining me tonight, Fox News chief political anchor and host of Special Report on the Fox News Channel. They just concluded, and he's here. Bret Baier, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Kennedy.
Hey.
And a new operation, new time, the whole thing.
I know. New studio, new time. A waterfall of hair. It's very exciting. So the briefing today was very tense with a number of reporters, people who in the past, like Yamiche, have been very hospitable to this administration, and now they've turned downright hostile. What do you make of that?
I do think that the Biden administration, the president's going through a really rough time with decisions that he made and his administration made, and the consequences for those has turned what has been a very friendly media into a very aggressive media. Not as aggressive, we should point out, as the Trump White House press pool, at least not yet, but they are asking more pointed questions about some of the decisions being made. I think, you know, if you look at this stretch, it is really a tough stretch for Democrats to look at as they see his approval numbers dropping, especially in key swing states.
And it's interesting because as I was watching Jen Psaki today at the lectern, a lot of it felt like propaganda. It didn't feel like the truth. And when someone is trying to shellac a story, there's a sense of unseriousness to the way they're handling some of these problems if they're not going to acknowledge them. And people are starting to see through the fact that, you know, maybe things weren't so great in Afghanistan. Maybe it's not sterling what's going on at the border, and you've also got COVID and the economy. So, you know, you've been in that room. You have asked pointed questions of press secretaries in various administrations. How is she doing?
Listen, I think she is very good as far as press secretaries go to be able to deal with a lot of different things, but she's also in a position where it's not a great set of cards that she's dealing with. And what reporters go for a lot of times is hypocrisy, and there's a ton of it on all of these stories. You know, when they blame Trump administration policy for something they're implementing, when you know, they try to turn the political phrase to point back to the past administration for something they chose to do, it is easy for reporters to pick up that ball. I think Peter Doocy has done a fantastic job in doing it respectfully, not doing it with animus, respecting the office of the president, but asking pointed questions like how many immigrants have been let into the country. The fact that they haven't provided a definitive number is pretty stunning after 2 days.
Yes, they're saying that there are only 5,000 people of 14 or 15,000, but they only account for about 5,000 others, which means that, you know, there's a pretty massive swath of people who have not been tested or vaccinated for COVID, who may be in various states or in Texas, and that's why you have lawmakers and citizens there who are very upset. And again, there have been progressive members of the press who have taken issue with some of the images of Customs and Border Patrol on horseback using long reins in whatever fashion to wrangle migrants. So now they're saying that they're getting rid of the horses. Is it wise for this administration to, if you can't blame Trump, blame the horses?
When you start blaming horses, you've got issues on your policy. Listen, the Border Patrol says definitively they didn't whip anybody. They were using long reins. No one was hit by the reins. The pictures obviously were taken in a way that really upset a lot of people on Capitol Hill and elsewhere, and the administration reacted to that. They were getting hit from the left and the right on a lack of border security. Now, so they said what? They said no horses, no Border Patrol agents on horseback. Okay. Well, you know, they've got to get there somewhere, and they've been using that for a long period of time. So the Border Patrol not happy with that. But they haven't been happy for a long time, Kennedy. They've been asking for more resources really since the beginning of summer in this region in particular. And I think that you're going to see more of these standoffs as more and more of these migrants come to that border.
And you're going to see more standoffs between the press and the administration when you have a president who's unwilling to answer questions when he's sitting next to the prime minister of, you know, our greatest ally, arguably, at least in Western Europe, who's happy to take questions from the British press corps. And that's why the press en masse marched into Jen Psaki's office to file a formal complaint. Will that have any purchase?
I mean, when she answered the question in the briefing, she blamed the British Prime Minister for not alerting them that he was going to take questions. So, listen, it's how you phrase it, how you package it. It's clear now to everybody who covers this White House that this president is avoiding questions. He has not answered questions since really the Afghanistan fallout, since the booster shot fallout from the FDA, since a lot of things. And clearly they're trying to protect him. So then it opens up more questions. And I think you're seeing more of the media jump into that fray.
Yes, and they say things like, no, he's had 135 press conferences. You know, I saw a Democrat pundit say that today on the Faulkner Focus, and it's like, no, he hasn't. That's not what that is. And please stop trying to sell us something that just simply isn't the truth. It's true that I love having you here and hope to see you very soon. Thank you, Brett.